Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Many of us, as we take a look at our diet, especially in a processed America, we find that we're lacking the kind of nutrients that our body needs to thrive and grow. So what we tend to do is take a shortcut and reach for those supplements, vitamins, minerals, things in bottles that everybody tells us is going to help us boost those kinds of things. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a guest we've had on the Beyond 50 radio program before. He's written 4 books, Never Be Sick Again, Never Be Fat Again, Never Fear Cancer Again, and Never Feel Old Again. Those are things never to feel. So today we're going to be talking about his research and how he began to become one of the country's experts in vitamin formulations, and he's going to share with us what we should consider before reaching for those supplements. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program our guest, Dr. Raymond Francis. Dr. Francis, how are you today?
I'm terrific, thank you very much.
Good having you back here again. Now, tell us what's going on here with these supplements. You hear about these things, maybe not being so good for you, but what's going on here?
Well, there's been a lot of bad publicity about supplements, and especially the last couple of years. And even last January, there were 2 major studies that were published in the Archives of Internal Medicine, and both of them came to the conclusion that the multivitamins didn't do anything for you. So you have to step back and say, well, now wait a minute. There are thousands and thousands of studies showing that vitamins are good for you, and all of a sudden we have 2 very well done studies showing that vitamins don't do anything for you. So what's going on? And here's what's going on. The drug companies are basically trying to discredit vitamins. Vitamins prevent disease, and vitamins cure disease. Drugs do not. Drugs don't prevent anything, they don't cure anything, and vitamins do. So vitamins are kind of, in a way, unfair competition to drugs. So the drug companies really want to discredit vitamins. So they do all these studies. They came out with some studies a few years ago and said, well, vitamin E is not good for you. And they came out with some more, and they said that the beta-carotene is not good for you. But if you look at the studies, what they did is they used synthetic forms of vitamin E and synthetic forms of beta-carotene that, as a chemist, I will tell you, they don't work. Mm-hmm. They don't work. But that's what they used in their studies, and then the conclusion is they don't work. Surprise, surprise. And it's the same thing with these 2 studies that were published last January in the Archives of Internal Medicine. They used a multivitamin that is very, very low in potency and very poorly formulated, and formulated with exactly the wrong forms of vitamins and minerals. You wouldn't expect them to work. I mean, if you had showed me that formula and said, will this do anything to prevent disease, I'd look at it and tell you no. Yet that's what they used in the studies, and lo and behold, they found that they didn't do anything to prevent disease, which we could have told them before they did the study. So this is what's happening out there, and the average person is very confused, which is exactly what they want, to keep the average person confused. Mm-hmm. And unless you're a chemist, and unless you can read these studies carefully and understand what they're saying, you're just out in left field. Mm-hmm. But today, everybody needs to supplement. It's a necessity. You simply cannot. Back in 1998, the National Academy of Sciences did a tremendous study. They looked through 36 years of data, and they came out and said that every American needs to take at least a daily multivitamin. And that's the National Academy of Sciences. And then there was the Earth Summit report, 1992 Earth Summit report, and they determined that 99%, now that's a lot, 99% of all Americans are mineral deficient. And Linus Pauling once said, you can trace every sickness, every disease, and every ailment to a mineral deficiency. 99% of the American population is mineral deficient. So, and the reason for this, of course, is that, we've changed everything. We've changed how we eat. We now have premature harvesting. We have long transit times to market. We have factory processing and other agricultural practices that have dramatically reduced the nutritional quality of our food. So today, the conventional produce that you buy at a supermarket is vastly inferior to what you could purchase only 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to 50 years ago, you've got to eat, for example, 4 carrots to get the same magnesium you get in 1 carrot 50 years ago. You got to eat up to 20 carrots to get the same zinc you got in 1 carrot 50 years ago. You see the problem. The minerals and the nutrition is simply not in the food because of the way we are farming. We harvest food before it's ripe, because if you don't, it can turn rotten while you're shipping it. But this reduces the nutritional quality by as much as 80% because it's the last few days of ripening before you harvest that you get most of the nutrition into the produce. So if you harvest it before that time, you can lose as much as 80% of the nutrition. And then, of course, it takes time to get to the market, and nutrients are lost very rapidly after the produce is harvested. Spinach, for example, 60% of its folic acid in 3 days. Vegetables such as asparagus and broccoli, green beans, can lose 50% of their vitamin C long before they reach the produce counter. And then, of course, when you cook these things, you get further losses. Typically, you'll get 25% loss of vitamin C, 70% loss of vitamin B1, 50% loss of vitamin B2. So you see what's happening here. The way we're farming, the way we're cooking, the nutrition is no longer in the food. Everybody needs to supplement. We need to make up for these losses.
Mm-hmm. Now, so what do you suggest then? Obviously it sounds like we do need to supplement. So what direction do we go? Because, for instance, having done this program over the years, I run into a lot of people who want to come on the program and they want to talk about a new superfood they've come across, and in essence, what happens is they become direct sales companies, that seem to have the best product out there, whether it's a juice or it's a supplement. And, as you said, it's very confusing to know, well, what is the best just because somebody says so, or there's a doctor behind them that says, no, I'm putting a blessing, and then pretty soon they gain a guru status, if you will. It's almost like a cult. So what do you suggest?
I know. I see this every single day. It's disparaging. What I suggest is people educate themselves.
Right.
I wrote a report on this, and it's available on my website. And anybody can go to the website and download the report for free. And it's about how to choose supplements. So go to beyondhealth.com. That's 2 words stuck together, Beyond, BEYOND, Health, HEALTH.com. And right on the front page, there'll be a little box there where you can download free reports. And one of them is on how to choose supplements. There are ways that anybody can look for. Oh, first of all, so many of these things are peripheral. It's
right.
Buy this juice, buy that juice, buy this. It's on and on.
Well, here's what I'd like to point out, and this is based on what you were saying earlier about when it's harvested and then when it gets to the processing plant and then finally right there to your mouth, so to speak. And you will hear, I'll just use one example out there, was the Acai Berry was a big one about 4 or 5 years ago, and it may still be, but it's kind of faded like a lot of these things, like a Zango.
Well, yeah, they come and they go.
And here's what I was thinking of, okay, so if you find this naturally in its state, like you're just out there, you're somebody wandering around in the woods and you find this berry, that it might at that moment be really, really good for you, have all those properties. But then when you get to a level of processing this thing to be able to get all that juice out there to all these people that are selling this stuff,
right.
Eventually I would think the quality would diminish tremendously.
Well,
it just doesn't make sense that it could have that same health property in its truly natural state, And so
exactly.
When people are spouting this off to you, you're like, but just think of the reason behind what you're saying here. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. But on another level, all of these things might be of some value.
Right.
And I'm sure they're not all totally worthless. Some of them, I'm sure, are worthless, but most of them have some value. But what you really have to look at is look at it this way. All of us are made of these little microscopic units of life called cells. And we all started life as one cell in our mother, and now we're multi-trillion-celled organisms. If every cell is working the way it is supposed to work, you can't be sick. Mm-hmm. And to keep it working the way it's supposed to work, it has a grocery list. You have to deliver those groceries on a daily basis, or the cell isn't going to get what it needs to function properly, and it's going to malfunction. And that's what disease is all about. So really the focus, the clarity I get on these things, so the focus has to be on delivering the groceries to the cell. And then you look at the JoJo juice or whatever it is they're marketing this week, and you ask yourself, well, will that do something for me? And the answer is, yeah, probably yes, it'll do something for you. But is it delivering all the groceries to the cell? And the answer is no. You have to first and foremost focus on delivering all the groceries to the cell. Now, once you do that, if you want to go take goo-goo juice, go ahead.
Sure.
Be my guest. It'd probably do you some good. But if you aren't taking care of the fundamentals, if you aren't delivering every grocery that cell needs on a daily basis, nothing is going to help you. So you've got to take care of the fundamentals first, and that's where the focus has to be. And if you do that, a multivitamin is one of the most important things that anybody can do. And just, the National Academy of Sciences recommended that every American take at least a multivitamin. But now you get into the question of, well, how do I get a good multivitamin?
Right.
And I just talked before about the two studies that were done, published in January, where they used a multivitamin. Actually, what they used Centrum Silver. And Centrum Silver is simply not a high-quality, high-potency vitamin. And so it didn't work. So you have to choose a multivitamin that is a high-potency, high-quality, high biological activity. And that's what I teach people how to do. And again, if you get one of those free reports off of my website, beyondhealth.com, you'll be able to learn about these things. You'll be able to learn how do you discern a good multi from one that isn't as good. And there are indicators on the label where anybody can read those common indicators and say, oh, well, this is not a good formula, or this is a good formula. So what I try to do is empower the average person to, help themselves. And I'll give you an example. You take a multivitamin, 90%, at least 90% of all multivitamins that contain vitamin B12. The B12 is going to be in the form of something called cyanocobalamin. Well, cyanocobalamin is not a natural molecule. It is a man-made molecule. The body really doesn't know how to handle it very well. And so the result is it is a poor source of B12. So most of us need B12. So you take your multi, it says it has B12, but you're really getting very little biological activity out of what's in that pill. And furthermore, even worse, the cyano part of that molecule is actually cyanide. And when that breaks off from the other part of the molecule, you're actually getting poisoned by cyanide. So this is not a good deal.
Oh, joy. Yeah, really.
It's no joy. Yeah, this is not a good deal. And so if any of you have multivitamins in your kitchen, rush out right now and go get the bottle and go look at the form of B12. So that's an indicator. Well, why did they put it in? Because it's cheap.
Right.
I use a form in my pills that I put together. I use a form of B12 called hydroxycobalamin. It's a perfect form of B12. It's really very biologically active. The body handles it extremely well and easily. It costs $7,500 a pound to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the other folks who are producing cheap products don't buy it. But then they produce cheap products, and the cheap products don't work. So you end up wasting your money.
Mm-hmm. I know it's fascinating to think, too. I was going to say that back in the 1980s, back in my warehousing days, I actually used to work for a pharmaceutical company very briefly, and predominantly what they produced was vitamin supplements. And my primary job there was to receive the materials, or just pretty much anything that came through the door, but mostly the raw materials that went into the processing of these supplements. And I was pretty astounded by some of the things that were coming through that door that were going in the bottles. That was the first thing. The second thing is at that time is that there were only two other companies in the United States besides the one that I worked for that actually processed vitamins. So there's three total companies, and this was back in the 1980s. It may have changed by then, but that you have all these labels that are out there. It could be, a particular store brand, or it could be, an organic brand. It didn't matter what the label was. They were all processed by the same person, and for the most part, the same formula. So
right, same stuff. And the thing is, you see, most of these are synthetics. Almost all your vitamin products are synthetics, and they all just come out of chemical factories.
Mm-hmm.
And the better manufacturers use food-based things, that come from foods. And but the synthetics form the most of what they're selling out there. Mm-hmm. And the synthetics are not the same thing. The molecules have a different shape. They're the same formula, but the molecules have a different shape, and in biology, the shape is extremely important because the molecules have to interact with enzymes, and it's like fitting the right key into the right lock. So in order to have the chemical reactions happen, you the right key into the right lock, and that means that the synthetics really don't work very well. In fact, the synthetics can actually jam the lock and prevent real vitamins from being metabolized. So you can actually take synthetic vitamins and cause a vitamin deficiency in your body because you've jammed the machinery.
Well, here's one for you, too. Okay, it's a very well-known fact, and this is kind of a leap that you go back to the time of Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, and how they were actually sickening a lot of the captives by putting broken pieces of glass into their food so it cut up their insides. Now, here's the weird thing. There was a time that I had received, it was at least 2 pallets of basically processed spun glass. Now, this stuff was amazing because it came in really large bags, but you could literally hold that bag up over your head with your pinky. That's how light it was. Wow. And not only that, but you had to wear a mask when you received this stuff. So I had to ask the people that actually did the putting together of the formulas, what do they use this for? And he says, well, in some cases they use it to bind the pill together. And I said, so you're telling me that there are some supplements out there that actually have glass in them? And he says, yeah, very small amounts. And I said, but it's glass. It doesn't really matter how small the amount is. You're taking that inside your body.
Well, that again is the difference between.
So I can attest to what really goes on in these things from my experience back then.
Well, it's good that you've had that experience because you know firsthand. Almost the average vitamin pill is filled with what we call excipients. They're filled with fillers. Like let's say the multivitamin that I make, it's a fairly large pill, but everything in it is a nutrient. There's no fillers in it. There's nothing. Your average vitamin pill can be up to 50% fillers. Up to 50% of the total weight can be lubricants and fillers and binders and artificial colors and artificial flavors. And in fact, we talked about the Centrum Silver that they did the studies with. Centrum Silver even has talcum powder in it. I mean, who needs talcum powder in there, right? It's got cornstarch in it. It's just filled with corn because there's so few vitamins and so few minerals. They have to fill the pill with other things, so they fill it with cornstarch and talcum powder, and Lord knows what else.
And just imagine the calcium that is proclaimed in a vitamin, and maybe not in all cases. And I received this as a raw material, oyster shell granule.
Right, exactly.
Okay, are you out there eating oyster shells because you need your calcium? I don't think that's going to work too well.
It doesn't, and the calcium, that's in the form of calcium carbonate. And usually on the label, it will say calcium carbonate. That's what an oyster shell is. It's calcium carbonate. So it'll say calcium carbonate. It won't say oyster shells.
Right. Only in the bag that I received. When it goes into the pill, they call it something else.
then it becomes calcium carbonate. And then the calcium carbonate, the calcium in there is approximately 10% biologically available to you. So if it says 100 milligrams of calcium, you're getting about 10 milligrams of biologically active calcium out of that pill. So again, you're not getting what your body needs, and furthermore, you're getting the calcium carbonate is that inorganic form of calcium is the wrong form. So once you start getting a lot of inorganic calcium running around in your blood, the body says, whoops, we don't want all this running around in the blood, so let's put it somewhere. So, okay, they start putting it in your arteries, and they start calcifying your liver and calcifying your, and growing bone spurs and all sorts of things. So everybody needs vitamins. Everybody needs a multivitamin, but you have to take a high-quality product because otherwise it isn't going to work for you. I've spent years designing the multivitamin that I take myself and that we sell through Beyond Health. And it's one of the highest quality multivitamins in the entire world. And I'll tell you, it isn't easy to make that because there's a lot of science that goes into making a high quality multivitamin.
Now, I got to ask you, what are your thoughts, for instance, about supplementing with green fruit smoothies? You see, the commercials for the NutriBullet and so forth, and I myself, I know that I have done this, and I do feel a difference, as far as that goes. And not to mention, what you're putting, the raw materials in there when you make these things.
Well, I think that everybody should be drinking at least a large glass of vegetable juice every day. And I don't know what you want to call it, a smoothie or whatever, but fresh vegetables, you can put it in a blender and blenderize it, or you can put it through a juicer and juice it. But the thing is that makes more nutrition biologically available to you.
Right.
When you chew food, it's an inefficient process. And if you chew it really, really, really well, you'll get maybe 30% of the nutrition out of the food. Well, how many Americans chew really, really well? And the answer is not many.
No.
I do. I mean, I've trained myself to do it. If you juice those same vegetables or blenderize those same vegetables, you can triple the amount of nutrition. So you can go from 30% of the nutrition available up to 90% of the nutrition available. So if you do that, you're getting more nutrition, your body is happier, and you should feel better.
Yeah. Well, no, I know I did, and, I would notice that over a week and then 2 weeks, my moods would become more stable. I would just, things didn't bother me anymore, and I was like, wow, this stuff really works, and it's so inexpensive to do. And, with where I live, though, which is in Portland, Oregon, is there are so many organic farms that come together for Saturday markets that you're really in touch with where this stuff comes from, and you're aware of what you're taking into your body, and it's just such a nice feeling to know something like that.
Yeah, well, you're blessed to be able to live in a place where you have that. I used to live in California where we had similar farmers markets. I now live in southeastern Florida, and it's a wasteland. I mean,
oh, no.
Zero food available in southeastern Florida.
So ultimately, people could get a really great supplement, as you were saying, through your website, beyondhealth.com. But my question is, if they go to the shelf at a store, how do they go about choosing?
Well, again, get a copy of my
free
report,
okay.
Because it actually gives you, a whole list of what to look for. What form is the calcium in? You don't want calcium carbonate. What form is the magnesium in? So the cheap vitamins will have calcium carbonate. The cheap vitamins will have magnesium oxide. The cheap vitamins will have zinc oxide. But these are inorganic forms of the minerals that are not biologically active in the body. So it's in there, and they can put them on the label, but it ain't doing you too much good.
Well, the key, too, as you were saying, is the ability for the body to absorb the nutrients. And sometimes, you take a look at popping this pill, and as you said, most of it seems synthetic. That drops into your digestive system, and the body really is kind of, well, now what do I do with this? And we hear this all the time from plumbers or people that work with septic systems. You see a lot of whole vitamin pills down there in these things. They've just been flushed down, so...
Yeah, well, we talked about Centrum Silver. I have nurses who tell me that, they call Centrums the bedpan pills.
He's making music over there. What's going on with that?
Yes, I mean, it's just amazing. But
whatever happened to the wind chime? We got a bedpan musician over here, so
it's not easy to make a good form. It requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of care, a lot of extra expense. But when you're finished, if you do it right, you come out with something that can literally do miracles.
And you're pointing out something that I think our listeners need to really be aware of, because sometimes you have so many people go out and they go cheap. I mean, we've got these Dollar Trees that sprouted everywhere. And certainly there's a big section on vitamins, and I even had a neighbor, oh, look, I can get all these vitamins for $1 each, and I'm thinking to myself, are you out of your mind?
Well, no, you see, the world tells them that's okay.
Yeah.
And even Consumer Reports will say a vitamin is a vitamin is a vitamin.
Right.
They really don't understand chemistry very well over there.
No.
But, and then, what is our experience? Our experience, I mean, you could go out and buy a new $350,000 Rolls Royce, and I could go out and buy a cheap secondhand car, and if we want to drive from Portland to Seattle, we'd both get there.
Right.
You'd get there in your Rolls, and I'd get there in my cheap little secondhand car. And so that's our experience, is that we don't have to spend the money to get to the same place. With vitamins, you do. Because with vitamins, unless you have the Rolls Royce, you won't get where you want to go. You get blocked. And you're only absorbing like 10% of the calcium. You're getting the cyanocobalamin that's actually poisoning you with cyanide. You're getting and you're getting talcum powder and cornstarch.
God forbid should you get that spun glass I was talking about.
Yeah, and the spun glass. Not to mention that, And so that's what you're getting when you buy the cheap vitamins. And then there's the purity. The cheap vitamins are all in what we call food grade. Well, food grade may sound good, but it's actually the cheapest and the thing that is the lowest quality that's acceptable. What you really want is we use oftentimes what we call reagent grade. That's the highest quality that you can buy. It's the highest quality obtainable anywhere. And you want that because a little bit of impurity can sometimes really screw up how the vitamin is going to work. So you need things that are very pure, and you need things in the correct biological form. And all vitamins come in different degrees of purity. All vitamins come in different forms. We just discussed the minerals. B vitamins, for example, there are forms of B vitamins that are very biologically available. That's what I put into my pill. There are others that are not biologically available, or much less biologically available. They're cheaper. So which do you want? Do you want the one that really works, or do you want the one that's... So typically, an average multivitamin probably is on somewhere in the order of, maybe 20% biologically available. My multivitamin is more than 95% biologically available. So which one do you want to put into your body? So you want the purity, you want the biological activity, and then your body gets what it needs, because, again, we have this huge deficit because of the diets and the way we farm. We have a huge deficit. If you have to eat 20 carrots to get the same zinc you got in one carrot 50 years ago, you better be supplementing with a very biologically active form of zinc. And that's not what you get in the average multi. You get zinc oxide, which is not very biologically active at all. But if you don't know the chemistry, then you really don't understand it. But if people read my report, I kind of teach them, about what's important, and I give them lists to look. They can take the report to the store and then look at the various things in the store and help them choose what they want.
Well, very good. Always a pleasure to have you here on the program, Dr. Francis. What's that website again? People can find out more.
It's beyondhealth.com, and beyond, BEYOND, and also get a copy of my latest book, Never Feel Old Again, because aging is a huge mistake. And it's a mistake you don't have to make. You can actually reverse the aging process, which I'm doing myself. I'm going on 78. And my arteries are down to age 22, and I want the arteries of a teenager by the time I'm 80. So you can reverse your biological age.
And after 10 years of broadcasting this program, I know that it's possible. Thanks again for being on the program.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it. It's always a joy. You're a great host.
Thank you very much. You can also find out more by visiting beyondhealth.com as well as beyond50radio.com, the number 50. We also have our weekly e-news updates. They're exclusive, so be sure to subscribe to them as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.